I've been studying mind training teachings for many, many years. It's a practice that's very popular and used in the Tibetan Buddhism. In Tibet it's called Lojong, mind training. So it's a collection of teachings that were brought to Tibet by this Indian master, Atisha, who came to Tibet. And he brought these teachings where they're very kind of like pithy instructions, pithy quotes, verses that help us, just turn our mind, train the mind to turn it from self-interest, what about me, to others, right? But also the wisdom of, get ready for this, there are no others. As we believe it to be, right? As permanent, unchanging, existent, right? And then the same with us, self. So it's looking at the self and breaking it down to actualizing and realizing that no self, the teaching of no self that the Buddha taught. So these mind training teachings, Lojong, consist of 7 points. And in those 7 points, there's 59 maxims or slogans. And very pithy. Some of you might have been here when I taught last month, in a couple of months. So these slogans that you can kind of put on your refrigerator even. They have like cards that you can get and study them that way with very brief instructions on the back. But these pithy instruction slogans that help us to really let go of that grasping of self, of the self. What about me? Me first, Bodhicitta, we call it bodhicitta also to training in bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is awakened mind or awakened heart. Bodhi is awake, like Buddha. Bodhi. Citta is translated in Sanskrit as heart and mind. It kind of has the same flavor, heart and mind. And you can kind of understand that when you say, sometimes we're up here in the mind, intellect, and then somebody might say, just follow your heart. It's like, the heart's thinking? But it is, right? It's like our intuition. It's like, this is close to this inner wellness, this we call it Buddha nature that we all have, this wisdom that we all have, but it's obscured by habits of self-preservation, territorial. It's like, what about me? What's in it for me? So it's 59 slogans. We're on the 6th point, which is the 6th point concerns how kind of evaluate our path. Since studying the other slogans, the 5th slogans, this slogan kind of focuses like, okay, how are we doing? How are we doing on are we applying this mind training, these teachings, these slogans, this advice? Are we applying it to our lives? Or are we just keeping it up in the bookcase as a recipe book, So here, I believe this is the 23rd slogan. I'm not sure, but I believe it is. This one focuses on abiding. The slogan is always abide by the 3 basic principles. And those 3 basic principles are to honor our commitments, honor your commitments, and to refrain from outrageous actions, or don't overindulge your self-image. And then the 3rd principle is to developing patience. So always abide by the 3 basic principles, to honor your commitment, what you decided you want to do. And the second principle, don't think you're all that. Don't show off, basically. After you've developed something, you go like, hey. And be patient. Because it takes patience on the path. Because sometimes, we might go like, I don't want to do it today. I don't want to be mindful today. I don't want to be awake today. I think I'm just going to hit the snooze today. But if we really explore, there's awareness in that. There's even awareness in that. That's what we call it ignorance, right? The Four Noble Truths. There is suffering. There is the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is ignorance, the Buddha said. Ignorance or self-clinging, Ignorance can also be, you can also look at it as ignorance, not like being dumb and, dim-witted, but ignorance of ignoring reality as it is. So the patience, we need patience to carry on, like those signs in the Brits use, right? Keep practicing Dharma and carry on. Keep mindful, carry on. So, honoring your commitments, as I mentioned, is to stick with a commitment that you want to train your mind. You want to work with whatever, everything is manure. It's good for the soil. Good for, right? We put shit in the thing to grow flowers. How amazing is that, right? So we don't say, no, keep the crap away, just the good stuff. That's like, here's where this is where I train my mind. Not when everything's pleasant. Sure, you can train there too and say like, this is not going to last, and be ready for it. But when it's unpleasant, is it easy to say, this isn't going to last? No, we usually go like, oh man, this really sucks. When's this over? Right? We forget that we can apply that same mantra. This is temporary. So that's mind training. That's training your mind to remember. Remember when things were happy? Everything was pleasant, and you said, and you were a Dharma practitioner, and you said, this is not going to last in permanence. But it's a lot difficult when it's uncomfortable to apply that, to bring that to mind, to train your mind and say, remember, this is also impermanent, transitory, moving, shifting. So stick with a commitment to that this is what you want to do. If this is what you want to do, right? Especially here it's talking more because we're at the 6 points, so it's saying you've already gone through a lot of these slogans and read, and read these instructions, and you decided, I want to do this. I want to work with the conditions. I want to relate differently to reality, to the experience in a different way, not in a habitual way. Seeing the habits and saying, I can go another way. I don't have to do this. So, and honoring your commitments. One is that, to study these slogans, these maxims, these little verses here, and kind of memorize some, or maybe just one. Always keep it in mind. But there's also the commitment of the formal commitment that one makes. And the formal commitment, to honor your formal commitment, is your refuge vow. If you're a Buddhist practitioner, and really serious and really like you committed yourself, there's a refuge that you can take. There's a vow. There's a ceremony. Like kind of you become baptized. Or remember somebody asked me that one time. They dip you in water or something like that. I'm like, not that kind of baptism, But taking refuge, so that's, your formal vow is to take refuge, and that's, as I mentioned earlier, taking refuge in the three jewels, right? The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The teacher, the historical Buddha, his teachings, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which is, twofold. It's like the disciples, his disciples, the noble Sangha they call it, which are, there was a Buddha, and then there was Shariputra, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, these his disciples who attained, had attainment. So we take refuge in them as well. But also, in the kind of in this environment, we take refuge in the community here. Like you mentioned, you come here, you feel a different energy sitting together, and you feel supported. So this is also the Sangha, taking refuge in the community, the Long Beach Sangha that we have here, meditation Sangha. So that's the formal commitment that I've done that. I've taken refuge 20 years ago or something like that, I think, So that's a commitment that I, honor my commitments. I take refuge. I don't take refuge in distraction and habit, ignoring or becoming intoxicated in in the emotions, I remember, take refuge in the three jewels, And that's not, like I mentioned earlier too, it's not an escapism, it's actually taking refuge. This is what helps. Oh yeah, everything's impermanent. Yeah, there's, all experiences they're not real. They're not as real as I feel and I believe them to be, There's others, but not as real as I believe them to be, We suffer when other passes away, right? Sometimes strong suffering, because we forgot. Birth, old age, sickness, dun, right? But if we remember, we still we suffer, like, oh, we lost a loved one, but it doesn't cloud our vision. We're going on for long times just in suffering. That's what I mean. There are no others in the way that we believe them to be. And then the second vow is the Bodhisattva. Actually, in the Refuge Vow, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the practice there is to develop mindfulness and awareness. And this is what we do when we sit, right? In our practice, we're developing mindfulness, non-distraction. And as we develop some stability, we expand our awareness, hear sounds, leg falling asleep, whatever, Travis walking into the room. And we're at ease. We're developing mindfulness and awareness. The second vow, that's in this honor your commitments, is the Bodhisattva Vow. The Bodhisattva Vow is connected to the Mahayana. The Mahayana, which they call, Maha is great and Yana is vehicle, so they call it the great vehicle. And then the Mahayana, vowing to, is the Bodhisattva Vow. Not just the Refuge Vow, but now you also take the Bodhisattva Vow as a Mahayana practitioner, meaning you vow to work for the benefit of others. Not just your own personal awakening, but also for others. Sometimes even saying, may I never awaken until others are awakened. It's like ushering everybody off the boat. Rather than saving yourself, your attitude is everybody off the boat. Get off the boat, it's sinking, and you're helping everybody off. And if there's a chance, you can jump off too. If not, oh well, but you let everybody off. And why is it no problem for a bodhisattva? No self. What bodhisattva? What others? Some might say, well, if there's no others, why is he saving them? If he had that attitude, he would, he would be holding on to self. There's no others. I'm out here first. So it's really interesting to develop that attitude, that mind. And the Bodhisattva's practice, the Mahayana's practice, is developing wisdom and compassion. Because like I mentioned, if you just have, it's like, again, two wings. If you just have compassion, I want to help others, I want to help, and then they don't thank you, they just, you're like, God, I did that for them and I didn't even say thank you. The wisdom wing wasn't there. Wisdom and compassion. So the compassion to see the suffering of others, the suffering of ourselves as well, the suffering. But the wisdom to see, again, ultimately, absolutely, there are no others. There is no self. And we could say, oh yeah, okay, I understand that, but it's really a realization that one has to, through practice, one actualizes. It has to be actualized. And once actualized, somebody asked my teacher once, what happens when somebody becomes realized? He says, you go back to work. As you said, as the sixth patriarch, it's like you go back to work. You don't sit in that stillness and peace. You actualize that, now you get to work. Get out there and work. Help others who haven't actualized wisdom and compassion. And then, so honor your commitments. They're easy to forget, and we drift off. Important to refresh daily. As you mentioned earlier, sometimes we drift off. Practicing mindfulness, but who knows? Maybe you might have not sat on not did your formal practice, but who knows, maybe you were mindful throughout the day, just very present. So what's the difference, right? Yeah. Sometimes we sit on a cushion for 45 minutes, good practitioners, and we get off into the world and we're total jerks. You know? So what use is sitting, in this great posture if we can't take this stillness that we've touched and glimpsed into the world? And then the second basic principle is it's called refraining from outrageous actions. Or my teacher, he translated it as don't overindulge your self-image. So the practice here is, again, this is like towards the 6 points, so kind of getting towards the end of the book. So it's implying that you've studied this, all the rest of these slogans, the other 5 points, and been practicing. But now a reminder: be steady with the practice, but be modest. Don't feel like, man, I'm at the 6th point. I rule, and look down on people. Oh, I'm at the 6th point. What point are you at? Or whatever we're doing. I'm a spiritual practitioner. I'm very spiritual. This is a reminder, a warning to refrain from outrageous actions. Charlatans, so many charlatans out there, right? Just tricking people and using people. So this is a advice to refrain from. Don't be outrageous. Maybe you have some charisma. Maybe people are attracted to you. Don't use that. Don't turn medicine into poison. That's another slogan. Recognize that if people are listening to what you're saying or seeing how you carry yourself, and appreciate that, honor that, and help others. Use that to help, not to lift yourself up. I'm a big shot. And then the third is to develop patience, as I mentioned, and we can't Zoom through mind training. No pun intended to those on Zoom. We can't Zoom through it. It's a lifelong practice or occupation, lives long. And from the Mahayana point of view, it's lives long. From the earlier Buddhist traditions, it was a lifelong vow that monks would make, that one would make for this life. I vow to, whatever their practice, their vow was. In the Mahayana, in the Bodhisattva, we recognize this is a lives long, many, many lives. This isn't our first, our first turn here. So we make the vow for many lives, and we work in this life so that, after we come to the end of the show, whatever our next act is, our next manifestation, appearances, however we appear, whatever realm we end up in, we still have a glimpse. We remember the training that we've done. We can see that. Some children are so kind and compassionate and loving, and some are terrors. I always see that as, this is a continuation of this person's wish, their vow. So when they take form again, it's easy for them. Something might remind them, They might see this image of the Buddha, and they're attracted, they're connected again. That's, a big thing in the Tibetan tradition too, these tulkus, reincarnates, whatever you call them, Some people don't believe in that. That's okay, But if you study the Buddhist teachings, the Buddha talked about this isn't your first go around. It's just, that's why the Buddha taught karma. Abandon non-virtue, adopt virtue. Good deeds. Because, what was it? If you want to know what you've been in the past, look at your present conditions. If you want to know what you'll be in the future, look at your actions. Your actions now will determine the future for you. So, yeah, the developing patience, like I said, this is, it's not like, okay, when's this over? How long do I have to go before I get my certificate, my diploma of, Bodhisattva? So patience with yourself and others also. Is patience with yourself. As I mentioned during our practice, be patient, be kind, gentleness and precision. Notice, oh, I fell asleep. Deep breath and the precision to remember the instructions and back on track. So the patience with ourselves and the patience with others, without bias. Not just patience for the people we like, that's easy. And we be patient with someone, who we have a certain concept about, certain idea. That's where the work is. It's the mind training. So yeah, be patient. I know you'll sit again soon. You're sitting right now. That's all that matters. I didn't sit yesterday. What are you doing right now? Sitting. Hey. All we have is just this. What are we doing with just this?